Picture this. It's 11 p.m. on a Thursday night. You're sitting at your kitchen table, just, staring down a folded piece of pastel cardstock.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. The anxiety of the blank page.
Right. Your pen is just hovering over the paper, the clock is ticking, and you are completely, utterly paralyzed by the pressure.
Because you're trying to sum up like a lifetime of really complex, messy, beautiful relationship dynamics into, what, two perfectly poignant sentences?
Exactly. And it is so intense that you usually end up defaulting to something totally hollow. You just scribble, thanks for everything, have a great day, which feels like the ultimate defeat.
It really does. And because so many of us hit that exact wall of panic every single year, this entire ecosystem of online guides has just, sprung up to save us from ourselves.
Which brings us to today. We are looking at a really fascinating stack of sources that pull back the curtain on this exact phenomenon.
Yeah, we have an article titled The Ultimate Guide to Mother's Day Card Messages, along with an audio analysis of that guide.
And weirdly enough, a brand logo for a collaboration titled Theo Grace X Nikki Hildy.
Which, at first glance, that stack of sources might just seem like, I don't know, a standard list of nice things to write, paired with some random jewelry marketing.
But when you actually examine the mechanics of how these messages are constructed, it becomes a literal mirror reflecting how we outsource our deepest interpersonal communications.
It is wild.
So this isn't just a creative writing workshop. This is a masterclass in modern family dynamics and consumer psychology.
100%.
And the mission of this deep dive is to unpack how an e-commerce jewelry brand perfectly scripts our most intimate feelings to map out our relationships and ultimately guide us right into their sales funnel.
It's brilliantly manipulative.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because staring at a blank page is one hurdle, but the very first thing this guide tackles is figuring out who exactly gets a card in the first place.
Right, because historically this was a very straightforward biological transaction. You have a mother, you buy a mother a card. Exactly. But this guide drastically expands the traditional definition of the holiday's recipient list. It completely changes the assignment.
It is a massive list. They provide specific templates not just for biological mothers, but for grandmothers, aunts, wives, stepmoms, mothers-in-law, and even sisters.
It covers everyone.
It really does. Looking at this list, it honestly reminds me of an emotional corporate org chart.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because think about it, just like a literal corporate org chart, you don't send the same casual, unstructured email to the CEO that you would send to, like, a lateral peer.
No, you definitely curate the tone.
Right. A biological mother is essentially the emotional C-suite. That requires a tone of absolute reverence. But a sister who is raising a puppy, that's a lateral colleague. That gives you permission to use a much more casual tone.
That analogy perfectly captures the hierarchical anxiety people feel when writing these cards. You're constantly assessing rank and tenure in your emotional history with the person.
I do have to push back a little on the scope of this org chart, though.
Okay, lay it on me.
The guide actually has a section for dog moms, where they suggest a message from a sibling that says, the puppies asked me to give you this.
Yes, the dog mom section.
Does expanding this holiday to literally everyone who has ever nurtured you, including pet owners delivering cards on behalf of golden retrievers, doesn't that dilute the specific gravity and meaning of the word mother?
That is the core tension of modern holidays right there.
If everyone gets a card, does the title lose its weight?
Well, the guide is actually reflecting a highly nuanced view of family structures. It's treating mothering as an action like a verb rather than a strict biological title.
Interesting. So it's about the labor.
Exactly. By offering distinct templates for each role, it attempts to validate the labor itself. Raising a dog requires patience, feeding, medical care, financial sacrifice.
So it's validating the village approach to caretaking.
Yes. The specificity of recognizing all these different forms of nurturing, rather than just handing everyone the same generic card, that is actually the antidote to the dilution you're worried about.
Okay, so it acknowledges that maternal influence comes from a wide network. But since the guide validates so many different types of caretaking, we have to look at how it dictates the tone we use to speak to them.
The tone is where it gets really revealing.
The general templates they offer are divided into two incredibly polarized categories.
There is absolutely no middle ground in their approach.
Let's look at the funny templates first. One of them is highly specific and, honestly, slightly self-deprecating. It says, "Thank you for all you do for us, and we may not say it often, but appreciate it every single day of the year. Without you, We would all be a big mess up.
A big mess up. I love that. Notice how beautifully clunky that phrase is.
It's very real.
It doesn't sound like a professional copywriter polished it in a boardroom, which is exactly why it functions so well. It sounds like something a slightly overwhelmed, well-meaning adult child would actually say while just, standing in a kitchen.
My theory here is that this clunky humor acts as an emotional shield.
Oh, absolutely.
If you've ever tried to write a card for a family member where the relationship is, let's just say, polite but tense,
We all have those.
you know exactly why people lean on these pre-written shields, saying, we'd be a big mess up without you. Allows families to acknowledge their dependence without the absolute vulnerability of naked earnestness.
Yes. Deflection through humor is a classic mechanism for handling emotional overwhelm, especially within families where earnestness just wasn't regularly modeled growing up.
You're expressing a deep human need, but you're doing it wrapped in a socially acceptable, lighthearted package.
But if humor is the shield used to deflect vulnerability, the other category of templates they offer serves the exact opposite function.
Oh, wow, the shift is intense.
It really is.
In the text of the guide, these emotional templates are heavily aggressively capitalized. It says, thank you for being the best wife, best mom, and best friend. You are truly amazing, and we appreciate everything.
All caps. Best amazing. Appreciate.
Yeah. Imagine actually speaking to someone like that in a normal conversational volume. It is like you are just shouting gratitude at the person.
Those capitalized words practically jump off the screen, and they serve a very specific psychological purpose.
What's the strategy there?
Think about the mental state of the person actively Googling for a greeting card template. They are often someone who struggles to express deep emotion naturally. They feel the depth of the love, but they are frozen by that blank page.
Right.
For those individuals, that aggressive all-caps text functions as an emotional megaphone. The guide outsources the emotional heavy lifting.
So they can say, I can't always articulate how much I care in my daily actions, so I'm going to let this capitalized text prove the sheer intensity of my feelings.
Exactly. It does the shouting for them.
But when a joke feels like a cop-out, and shouting in all caps feels unnatural, the guide has to shift tactics completely.
Because general templates fail completely when the fundamental nature of the relationship has changed.
Right. Humor and megaphones might work for everyday appreciation, but we run into a fascinating problem when dealing with deeply intimate, life-altering transitions. We have to look at how these scripts handle profound identity shifts.
The messages for adult daughters illustrate this perfectly.
Yes. The guide suggests some mother writing, watching you become a wonderful and thoughtful mother and wife has been such a blessing in my life. I am in awe of you.
That specific template is doing something much heavier than just expressing gratitude. It is scripting a rite of passage.
It's powerful.
The mother is looking at the child she once bathed and disciplined and is officially declaring her a peer. It is the older generation validating the entry of the younger generation into the shared, difficult experience of motherhood.
That is a beautiful transition, but it honestly pales in comparison to what might be the most psychologically complex section of the entire guide, the messages for new moms.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
The guide scripts these entirely from the infant's perspective. It says, Happy first Mother's Day, Mommy. I love our playtime together and our snuggles. Thank you for your love and for everything you do for me.
Writing a card from the perspective of a baby is a wildly common cultural trope.
Which is completely bizarre when you stop and think about it. You are ghostwriting an autobiography for someone who hasn't even developed language skills yet. Why do we ventriloquize infants like this?
Well, consider the stark reality of a sleep-deprived new mother. She has essentially lost her pre-baby identity.
Her entire life has changed.
Her entire day, her entire physical being is poured into sustaining a tiny human that cannot give her a single word of affirmation in return. The infant just takes.
Wait, if the baby can't talk? The baby isn't the one validating the mom. The partner is. The partner is ventriloquizing the infant to give the mother her identity back.
That is the exact psychological mechanism at play. The mother desperately needs the feedback loop of her labor closed. She needs to know the sacrifice is registering. Since the infant causing the exhaustion cannot provide that validation, the partner steps in and acts as an emotional proxy.
An emotional proxy. That is incredible.
They act as a translator for the infant's silent gratitude. By speaking through the baby, the partner closes that loop, providing the exact specific validation the mother is starving for.
We're using these little pieces of pastel cardstock to navigate the most turbulent identity shifts in our lives. That level of psychological heavy lifting requires a shocking amount of empathy.
It really does.
But having explored the genuine depth of these templates, we have to pull back the curtain and look at the actual machinery producing them.
Right, because as profound as that proxy concept is, we are still talking about a piece of e-commerce content marketing. We can never lose sight of the fact that this guide exists to generate revenue.
True. But to the brand's credit, they don't shy away from the hard stuff to get that revenue. The guide includes a raw, incredibly authentic quote for stepmoms.
What does it say again?
It says, "I know being a stepmother isn't always easy. You've had to step into a role that you didn't create, and you've done it with so much grace and love."
See, most traditional drugstore greeting cards rely on frictionless positivity. They avoid conflict and complex family dynamics at all costs to appeal to the broadest possible demographic.
But this template names the friction explicitly, a role you didn't create.
Exactly. By acknowledging the inherent awkwardness and boundary issues of a blended family, the copywriter builds a much deeper sense of trust with the reader.
It is stunningly empathetic. But then, and this is amazing, literally right underneath that profound empathy, the machinery glitches in spectacular fashion.
The typo.
Yes, there is a hilariously clumsy copy-paste error in the text. The fact-checker, Rebecca Marshall, left a quote meant for a niece directly into the aunt section. It literally says, "I am so blessed to have you as a niece. You're such a great mom," right in the middle of the templates designed for aunts.
That typo reveals the literal machinery of SEO content mills. A human isn't agonizing over these sentiments by candlelight. An algorithm is optimizing keywords for female caretaking to capture Google search traffic.
The empathy is mass-produced.
Exactly. Wires get crossed in high-volume e-commerce marketing because, at a certain level, the specific human relationship matters less to the algorithm than capturing the search volume for the holiday.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because that deep empathy we saw in the stepmom quote, it is entirely purposeful, and it leads directly into the ultimate commercial hook.
The transition is seamless.
The guide suggests one final emotional template. He says, "Enjoy your kid's name close to your heart. Always know you can look down and hold their names in your hands, on your heart, and having them on your mind."
Hold their names in your hands doesn't sound like a heartfelt sentiment at all. It sounds like literal instructions on how to wear a piece of jewelry.
Because it is. When you look at the bottom of the article, you see the entire architecture of this operation. This guide is published by Theo Grace, and they are promoting a branding collaboration, Theo Grace X Nikki Hilton.
There it is.
Right below that, names on your heart. Quote, the article links directly to Theo Grace when named necklaces. They highlight the Riley unisex designs, the Habibti Arabic name necklace, articles on why mixing metals is the jewelry trend to master in 2025, and a prompt for 15% off your order.
The transition from ancient maternal bonds to 2025 mixed metal trends is jarring, but the subliminal seed is planted perfectly.
That's kind of genius.
Mentioning the Riley unisex and the Habibti Arabic designs shows us exactly who they are targeting, a highly modern, diverse, trend-conscious demographic. They are using timeless emotional sentiments to capture a very specific, modern consumer.
That profound, raw empathy we loved in the stepmom template is psychological validation functioning as a loss leader.
A loss leader for a necklace.
This is a jewelry company with over 70,000 reviews and a 4.5 out of 5 rating. They are in the business of moving physical inventory, and they're using our emotional paralysis to do it.
The brand understands the mechanics of modern consumerism flawlessly. They aren't just selling Nikki Hilton collaborations. They are monetizing the relief of having your emotional panic solved.
Because you arrive at their blog stressed out.
Right. You're staring at that blank card at 11 p.m., feeling guilty that you don't know what to say and haven't bought a gift yet. By giving you the perfect words to validate your complicated family dynamic, they build immediate trust.
They solve your emotional problem.
Which drastically lowers your psychological barrier to solving your physical problem, buying the gift. They funnel you directly from your emotional panic into their shopping cart.
They even explicitly stated in the guide. They actually write, personalized gift cards are just as meaningful as the gift itself. They are selling outsourced emotional labor, and we as consumers are perfectly happy to accept the help.
We don't mind the commercial intrusion as long as it cures the panic of the blank page.
We deeply want to express love, but we appreciate having the emotional scaffolding provided for us.
The convenience of the template just outweighs the somewhat cynical reality of the sales funnel.
To wrap this all up, a piece of e-commerce content marketing meant to sell a Nikki Hilton collaboration named necklace actually holds a massive mirror up to our society.
It really does.
It shows us how we define family beyond biology, how we use humor as a shield to avoid earnestness, and how we navigate shifting identities by acting as emotional proxies for infants.
And amidst all that SEO-optimized machinery, the guide offers one piece of incredibly ironic advice. At the very end, after handing you dozens of pre-written templates, it says, skip the fluff and keep it real.
Which brings up a wild paradox. If you are reading this guide and an e-commerce copywriter drafts a template designed specifically to sell a mixed metal name necklace, but that template happens to perfectly capture exactly how you feel about your mother-in-law, does its commercial origin even matter?
It is a profound question about the nature of authenticity. If the sentiment accurately reflects your reality, does the SEO strategy behind it negate the love being expressed?
I don't know.
The simple act of choosing those specific words out of all the possible words on the internet arguably makes them authentically yours in that moment of selection.
That's a fair point. But it still leaves you with a really unsettling thought about where this is all heading. As we increasingly rely on search engines, brands, and SEO fact-checkers to articulate our deepest feelings, are we losing our own internal emotional vocabulary?
The atrophy of our own ability to express ourselves is the ultimate risk of outsourcing our intimacy to an algorithm.
If the future of connection is entirely mediated by search engines handing us the perfect, corporate-approved script, will the true measure of love someday be the simple, messy willingness to sit at a kitchen table and write a terrible card using our own flawed words? Something to think about the next time you're staring down that blank piece of pastel cardstock.